Tenet goes against so much of what makes action films fun to watch. It doesn't have a simple premise, it's full of exposition and puzzles, there's a rom-com smushed into the middle of it, and it's so loud you probably won't understand a good portion of the dialogue. It's an incredibly disorienting film. But, and just hear me out on this before you call me pretentious, this disorienting feeling is so important to the film, and it is part of what makes it an incredibly satisfying film to watch unfold. Tenet throws you right into the middle of spy espionage, time travel jargon, and algorithms, but doesn't ask you to understand it all. Getting fixated on all the little intricacies and details of Tenet will only result in failure. It's like how you get so fixated on a grade school math problem that you end up dooming yourself to never figuring it out. What you have to do instead is feel it out, and eventually you just get that click. Tenet is centered around many moments of realization, both for the audience and the characters. Some of these moments for these characters are heartbreaking or cathartic, but many clicking moments for the audience will have you realizing that this is one of the coolest movies ever made. And I just want to talk about all of it. Tenet wastes no time throwing you right into the action. This opening scene is a cluster, don't get me wrong, but I believe that there is a very interesting tightrope act going on here that I feel like has gone pretty much unmentioned. You are seeing a lot that is hard to understand. What did that composer do to that shooter? Why are these Russian guys working with... Oh shit, that was a cool trick he did with that bullet. Why are they talking about Twilight?
We live in a Twilight world.
What the hell is this cube? It's this great back and forth of the film throwing confusing dialogue and visuals at you while also presenting you with thrilling action and mystique. Even though it can be really hard to tell what is going on in the moment, this is still an incredible display of action and pacing. And after being thrown right into the chaos, we realize that Tenet is about to get a whole lot more confusing. After getting Tenet pilled, the protagonist goes on a globe-trotting adventure doing hand gestures and asking many questions. This onslaught of information is incredibly overwhelming, but I honestly don't get the issue many people have with it. This is a spy thriller, and we are entering a tangled web of uncertainty, and the charismatic Neil is there to help us along the way. And again, this is all nicely balanced out with some incredibly thrilling set pieces, and the film goes out of its way to warn the audience that this onslaught of information won't help you.
Don't try to understand it. Feel it.
There's so much that is hidden from the audience in the first half of the film, and if you try to peel away at it without feeling it out, it will eat you alive. The film's villain, Sator, embodies this film's aching confusion. He is a controlling, abusive husband toward Kat, and he's also pulling the strings all around the world in ways that we just don't understand yet. He sets the protagonist out on this heist, and it's here that we go back to that tightrope act I was talking about. Trucks in Place is one of the coolest heists I've ever watched, and watching it all come together is so satisfying. But then you realize that the payoff is this mysterious cube yet again. What is this thing? Tenet, much like its villain, maintains control over us through constantly toying with us and leading us into the dark. But in all this confusion and disruption, the audience finally gets a chance to feel. Neil has been so mysterious because no sentence can really set things straight for the protagonist, and the only way to understand it is to experience it. We can slowly piece together some of the inner workings of the inversion as it unfolds right before our very eyes. We see the effect before the cause, and there are benefits to that new perspective. The next half of the film almost feels like you're rewatching it. We start to rethink earlier details, and it becomes clear that the early parts of this film were already telling us how this story was going to end. Now we are about to arrive at the moment that this film really clicked for me. But before that, I really have to talk about this film's music. I have had the many percussive beats of this film ingrained in my mind for years. I literally cannot get them out of my head. Ludwig Göransson is a genius, and his reverse instruments and rhythmic synths are so important to this film's identity. I can't think of a single scene that isn't accompanied by the score. This film is the definition of an opera. A drama set to music and made up of vocal pieces with orchestral accompaniment. And oh wow, would you look at that? This film starts in an opera house. See? You see? But in all seriousness, the soundtrack does so much to guide or even misguide the audience. It carries us through the drama of the opera house, shakes us with its unnerving synths and trucks in place, and the soundtrack guided me to the aha moment of this film for me. After Kat is shot by an inverted bullet, we witness the protagonist and his boyfriend cross the threshold, and we see him begin to take charge. But he realizes that mistakes cannot be rewritten when his inverted actions end up being the reason for why he loses the mysterious cube. But this mistake is the beginning of the moment of realization. Mistakes cannot be rewritten. What happens, happens. And oh, he is Tenet! Oh my god, he was the guy at the airport. They need to reverse Kat so they can get back to moving forward, and they need to go to the airport to do that. Ludwig comes in on the synths, the protagonist runs against the wind, and we witness a fight that was initially confusing become a moment of absolute go-with-the-flow majesty. This shit rules. This inverted airport scene was the clicking moment of the film for me when I first watched it, and I still got goosebumps at my recent 70mm rewatch. It encompasses everything I love about the film. This satisfying clicking moment where the causal nature of inversion becomes clear is accompanied with this absolutely insane visual set piece alongside with Ludwig's sweeping score. Even if you do not understand the inner mechanics fully, it does not matter because it's just so cool to watch. This movie's just so awesome, man. Look at this film reel they gave us. Don't try to understand it, feel it, is more than just a line of dialogue to help the audience cope with their confusion. This whole initial conversation opens the door for this action film's sweeping set pieces to be more than just that. The implications of Tenet's inversion mechanics are that there is really no changing anything. Timelines can't be rewritten and things happen because they happen. But there is control to be found by riding that wave of causality. The outcome may be set in stone, but it's yours to own up to. Kat was always going to be free. The protagonist and Neil were always going to part ways, but their connection to each other transcends time and space.
I'll see you at the beginning, friend.
I am an absolute sucker for stories about people facing causality head-on, and because of that, I absolutely adore Tenet. I'm not saying it's the deepest film ever. If that were the case, I would have spent more time diving into the characters. But really what makes this film so incredible to me is the absolute dedication to the vibe. I know that word sucks, but I mean, that's how you describe this movie. It's a vibe. It tells a story of humans facing the unstoppable force of causality and becoming freer individuals by the end of it. And it does it through some of the coolest looking action ever. This video's kind of been all over the place, but that's just because this movie has been all over the place. Tenet is a very, very overwhelming film, but if there's one thing that you can take away from this video, I hope it is this. The moral of Tenet's story is that bisexuals can control time.